on to the event more broadly. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the video and it's given everyone something to think about as we go into the event. So first of all, how tonight will work, I will do a quick introduction to who Progress and Dialogue are as an organisation. And then our wonderful panel of speakers will introduce themselves and chat a little bit, up to 10 minutes, about themselves, their work, anything that they feel like bringing to the conversation. We'll then move into some pre-prepared questions and then the panel will discuss. And while that's happening, we'd encourage you to submit your questions to the panel, which should be done via the Q&A box, which you'll be able to see at the bottom of your screens. And so if you submit there, we can then see your questions and we will weave them into the conversation. And in the final half hour or so, we will focus on the questions that you want to ask. So there won't be any chance to call out or speak to the panel, but if you put the questions in there, we will be able to feed them through to our wonderful speakers. So as well, one of the reasons we want to have this event in particular, and we wanted to bring together these fantastic speakers, is obviously in this political moment, with Black Lives Matter really much at the forefront of conversation, it is so important that we have these conversations about race, and we particularly discuss about Scotland, because it is an area where people often gloss over the issues or where it isn't in prominent focus. So we hope that you'll all learn something and gain from the conversations you listen to today as people talk about their own lived experiences. During this event, some of it will focus on particularly experiences that Black people face and racism directed specifically towards Black communities, and some issues that will be discussed are more generally impacting upon all Black and ethnic minority communities within Scotland, and that will be perhaps more general issues that arise. So who are Progress and Dialogue? We're a not-for-profit social enterprise. We were founded in June out of a loose network of sort of local grassroots champions for causes. We work to amplify voices of people from marginalized communities and seldom heard communities. We don't work with any specific group because we're really keen to forge links between different marginalized groups and bring people together who want to champion change and social progress, and maybe work across different aspects of marginalization, particularly as we appreciate within individuals there are more than one aspect to identity and perhaps more than one aspect to their marginalization within society. So what we do is, one of the ways we do this is to have these conversations for change, because we believe actually engaging with people and their lived experience in their lives is a great way to learn from each other and to question our own assumptions and what we maybe thought we knew or we didn't know. And so we're thrilled that our panelists tonight are happy to join us, that they're giving up their time, and hopefully they will also enjoy this evening too. We do have, as you will have seen on your emails and on our social media, a safe space policy. Basically, it boils down to use inclusive communication, be mindful of privacy. You know, what you hear and might not be necessarily what should be taken away, but hopefully you can gain from that, and just respect what people are saying is their own experiences, and respect that these experiences might be different from what you assumed or what you've experienced. And just, you know, use respectful language. We encourage people to question. We want people to learn, but we do expect people to be respectful to each other and to our speakers who have taken the time to be with us tonight. So that's a little bit about us. I am going to facilitate the conversation, but it's not my conversation. So I'm going to hand over straight away to our panelists to all do a short introduction before we move on. So Helena, you're the first person on my screen, so I'll go to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Emma. My name is Helena, and I am really glad to be part of this conversation. I live in Scotland and I have lived here for about 16 years, maybe. So I have made Scotland my home, really. I'm originally from Uganda. And yeah, so I am a mom of 3 beautiful children, and my husband's Scottish. So I am totally intertwined in the Scottish community. But besides that, I work for an organization called Passion for Fusion. And Passion for Fusion is a Black and ethnic minority organization. We support young people a lot to really integrate and build confidence and become responsible citizens here in Scotland. And we really started that. I'm one of the founding members of that organization, and we started it because really when I first came to Scotland 16 years ago, you would hardly see any people like me. You know, you would go about in Edinburgh and you see a bus and someone on the bus and you're just almost waving, going, hi, are you from, you know, where I come from, just to have that conversation or that connection. And yeah, so we came together as a group just to support because integration is very difficult. When you migrate from a different country and you come here, it can be really hard because the systems are different, the currency is different, maybe the language, the way they speak is different. So I guess, you know, we needed some sort of connection of how do you do this? How did you manage with this? How did you get on with this? And that's how we formed Passion for Fusion. And yeah, so this topic is very dear to my heart because, you know, I have experiences, my people have experiences. As an organization, we really believe in talking about such issues. So I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Helena. I'll move on to Natasha.
Hey, hello, thank you for that. No, Helena is so impressive. But I'm Natasha, and I'm a research scientist up here in Aberdeen. And I've been in Scotland for the majority of my life since I was about 3 years old. And obviously, I identify as very much Scottish, but at the same time, I'm half Thai, so I was all being Asian and mixed race. And that kind of informed my, experience living, growing up. It was actually quite difficult when first moving over, not that I remember at that age, but starting school and being very alienated in the school I was at. I was basically the only one non-white kid, and let's just say I didn't really have any friends except for one girl. And it was nice to see things progress as times go on and stuff too. And things were, I had a lot of stuff growing up, but in the past 10 years or so, things were getting better. But as we've seen with like Black Lives Matter and a lot of things haven't totally gone away. And there's a lot of like microaggressions that still occur, even to me, like, to this day, and things, little things that I thought I didn't expect. So I thought, well, as much as I was quite quiet about things before, not wanting to rock the boat or not wanting to put myself out there, because the amount of times that you try and say something, you get shot down, I was just like, I'm quite reluctant to. But after seeing the, severity of the situation, like, as it passes out now and everything, I thought, as someone who's experienced racism for, the majority of my life, I feel like I should say something. And although my experiences may not be the same as, those of like Black people, there's some things that obviously, as ethnic minorities, we all share in these kind of experiences as well. So that's just a little bit about myself there. I do some artwork related to these issues at the moment, and try to highlight things through my experience, because sometimes I feel it's easier to get things out as pictures rather than words in these kind of aspects, and hopefully these will kind of resonate with some people too. But thank you.
That's great, Natasha. And Samuel, I'll come to you.
Hi, thanks Emma and Davey, first of all, for inviting me. My name's Samuel. I was born in Nigeria, but I grew up in England and Scotland. So I lived in England for like a little bit, and then in Scotland, I've been here ever since. And I'm currently studying at the University of St Andrews, where I'm the ACS president, and also I work with the Holocaust. We work to combat anti-Semitism all across the UK. And I've been doing that for a few years now. But even within that, I see parallels within, what is being done on that front in terms of anti-Semitism, and what could also be done in terms of, anti-Black racism in the UK. And I think as someone who came from a different place, from Scotland, I was really shocked, first of all, like, not, you know, I think it's like the food, the weather, the culture. But I think above all, like I was shocked by, you know, the different attitudes to race. And also when it came to just, you know, people coming from other places as well, I felt like there needs to be done on that front. As you know, as a kid, you know, you're often confused as to why is this happening, you know, like what's going on here? Is it something I've done, or is it like, you know, something, is it just kids being mean? But I think as you grow up, you realize that it's actually a broader issue, and it's not just about, you know, people being spontaneously racist. Like these things come from somewhere more often than not, and they'll learn from somewhere. And I think it's about really trying to teach people to unlearn that, or even teach them, you know, a way to be more inclusive before that even comes about, you know, and also challenging ideas they might have within the home. So, I mean, ultimately, this is why I do support the BLM movement and the work they're doing to, you know, really change the way things are at the moment. And I'm a big fan of, you know, I think there are a lot of issues within organizations when it comes to racism and anti-Black racism especially. And I feel like to solve that at the end of the day, you do need to have organizations in place that can really fight that and really push for more equality in that front. But yeah, as I've said, I think these issues are very important, and more needs to be done on different fronts, you know, in schools, in households, and, you know, even within like friendship groups and whatnot. I think more needs to be done. But also, yeah, that's why I'm here today, just talking to you guys, trying to see what you guys, what your view on these issues are. And, you know, maybe if there's any way I could possibly be of assistance or provide anything useful, I'd appreciate that. I would like to do that. So, yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Samuel. And I'm sure just being here and having this conversation will be really useful to some of our attendees, and hopefully to each other as well. And so finally, Phoenix, if you want to do a wee introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Phoenix. I am one of the directors for Progress in Dialogue. I joined the team because I thought this is a fantastic organisation that helps to have conversations with people of marginalised groups and kind of have a voice to people that kind of otherwise would be in the background. And it's a fantastic organisation to talk to people with intersectionalities of their life. And I think we're much more complex as humans than people realize, from our backgrounds, from our jobs, from our histories, from our cultures. And I think these things should be celebrated more than just, oh, on the surface, you look like this, you look like that, who happens to be the famous person at that point in time. You're much more than that. And organizations like this help with that, help talk to people, help for people to understand and not necessarily shove it down your throat. Hey, you should stop being this, you should stop being that. And I think that's great. For me personally, I came to Scotland about 10 years ago for studying. And then before that, I was in England. Yorkshire girl, born and bred. Yorkshire's my home. And it's just an interesting thing just growing up and getting the different education systems in Scotland and England, and how unfortunately racism, people don't want to talk about it. And racism doesn't have to be a straight out, I'm calling you a certain word. It can be as simple as, you know what, do you use this product instead of this? Or I bet all you people that look like that, do you use that? And I think having these conversations of why people think that and where it stems from, and understanding that there is a problem and it's not just in one area, it's across the board, and how we can work together to sort that out is something that we should do more often. And even if people are afraid or uncomfortable, just having a gentle, relaxing conversation, saying, look, I might say something a bit stupid, but hey, can we have this conversation, is great. And people were having it before Black Lives Matter protests were happening, and they're having it now. And I think that's good, and we should keep doing it until we have more of a fair and equal society, an inclusive society as well, that celebrates people not just by the colour of their skin, but who they are as a person and what their likes are and dislikes are. And I think that's why competition like this should be happening. So I'm happy to join it and hope it's going to be great for everybody listening and taking part.
Great, thank you to all our panelists there. So as you see, everyone's bringing a fantastic wealth of experience, but different experiences to this conversation. I think that's one of the most important things, and what we do want to get across at Progress in Dialogue is people are complex, and there is no one particular experience within any particular group. So hopefully that's something that's going to come across today. So I'm going to move on to some of the questions that we prepared. At any point, if you have an idea for a question, do please put it in the Q&A. So the first one, this is quite general, is what do you think are the main challenges facing Black people and Black minority ethnic people within Scotland? Feel free, any of you can jump in.
Okay. Yeah, so I will speak from my own experience, but also I know a lot of other people that have had these kind of challenges. As I said earlier, obviously I come from Africa, Uganda to be exact. And when I came to this country, I had a degree, I was educated, I spoke English very well. But when it comes to employment, it's really, really difficult to navigate the system. But also you're made to feel less than because you didn't learn in this country, or you don't speak like the people in this country. And that, it took me a long time to really digest that, because Uganda being a British colony, we studied on the British curriculum. So I thought I will just slide in and enjoy it and, find myself, because this was Britain. But it wasn't that easy, and it's the same experience or a challenge for a lot of the people that we work with or in our community. You'll find people coming here as doctors or nurses, and they will end up as cleaners because they didn't study here, they don't have the right experience, they are over what is the term they use, is it over educated or overqualified for what they can do. And that's a huge knockback, not just on your confidence, but if you start out, you were a lawyer, a doctor in your country, and you come here, obviously there's different reasons why people come to this country, and it's kind of it knocks you back if for 2 years, 3 years you are really working as a cleaner or a carer, when in actual sense you were a doctor. You start to lose your experience, you start to lose your confidence, and that's a very, very huge challenge in our community. I don't know if the rest of the panel agree, but I think that's
I echo your point in the sense that, like, with employment, I think there are issues within, and also like whilst you're trying to find, and also like within employment. So I think whilst you're trying to find, there's also like issues of you don't have the same access to other things that your peers might have, or you might not come from the same sort of places, so you might not have the same sort of network or like that sort of experience, I guess. Well, not experience, but like just that background knowledge that a lot of people do have. And I think within work, however, there's also a lot of issues. So within the NHS, for example, I've spoken to like various different, doctors, I've spoken to nurses, various people within the NHS. And even within that, you see there's issues even for Black people within the NHS, in the sense that, like, if you were to look at, disciplinary reports, for example, right, Black people are disproportionately represented to a high degree on disciplinary reports within the NHS. So I think, for me, that's just like, one of the ways in which issues that Black people do face do appear in Scotland. But I think also, there's also another issue, I think, for Black people would be perception, in the sense that you meet a lot of people who have an idea of what a Black person is before they even meet you. So for me, for example, I've talked to a lot of people who had a perception of me before they even met me. And I think due to that, we weren't really able to talk properly, or even connect, or even just have a real conversation because of that. And I think it happens to Black women as well, especially I think in the UK or just different places, that there's a stereotype of being this angry Black woman, even though you're trying to say your own point or what you experience. So I think for me, that's how I feel like some of the issues do occur for Black people. But I'm not sure if you guys agree with me, or where I'm coming from, but yeah, that's what I think, essentially.
No, I definitely agree with both of your points there. Obviously, that's not my experience, but I've seen this with other people and things as well, and especially what Helen was saying about people coming over with their education, especially if you're from a British colony or something, and you know, people here have the perception or things like, oh, why do people want to come here, do this, that, and the next thing and stuff as well. So I think that's a huge barrier. And I get what you're saying as well, from not having, Samuel, from not having the same opportunities, access to things and stuff as well, especially, you know, if maybe like either your parents or your grandparents, you know, work from here, that network, these other things too. But yeah, also within the workplace, that's something I definitely agree with. Like for me, like, well, Asian anyway, you always get treated kind of like a perpetual foreigner. Like it's never seen as like, I mean, I get compliments on my Scottish accent all the time as if I'm not supposed to have one. And I feel like it's a step up from saying, oh, your English is really good, even though I've grown up here, English is my first language and stuff. But even that, it's like even people quite high up and stuff will like say to you, I had a very high profile event, and this person who's basically the head of the department and things as well was saying to me, oh, they won't be interested in that. They want to know things like, how do you find Scotland? How did you get to Scotland? What do you think of Scotland? And I'd already spoken, so they heard my accent and everything, and I was just like, my jaw had hit the floor and things too. And then there's like subtle things at work where people talk to you and stuff, and they say things that you're just like, do you realize what you've just said there and stuff? So I think that's a huge barrier. It's like, if you want to integrate and feel, you know, part of a community, having these little things there, it chips away at you every single time, and it makes you feel like, yeah, you're never quite one of them. You're always on the peripheral, I guess.
I completely understand what you've been saying, all you've been saying. It's funny just listening to that and seeing the kind of experiences I had in England and then coming to Scotland. For me, I think one of the biggest things that was shouting out to me was a lack of understanding and care. It's weird because some people think, oh, stereotypes, it's just a stereotype. Most stereotypes are good, or, you know, Asians are supposed to be good at maths, or yeah, black woman's supposed to be sexy and fierce, those kind of stereotypes. They're all positive. No, because it puts us on this weird pedestal, like we're supposed to attain to it. And if we don't, if we show a bit of vulnerability, we're having a bad day, or we don't stereotypically like something that you think we should like based on our perceived ethnicity, oh, why don't you do that? Oh, you're weird, you're different. Oh, that's not nice. And I'm thinking, why would you do that? You've already judged us before you've even met us. And then if we don't step up to the plate as you want, as you know, you've given us this plate, oh, you know, we don't like you. I think you're being a bit sensitive to the things we're saying. I don't think you understand where we're coming from. It's not, we don't mean it in that way. It all counts. It all hurts on a day to day, from schooling. You know, maybe there's only a few of you in the class of your same ethnicity, and then they lump you all together. From, you know, education-wise, going into university, oh, you're this ethnicity, you should go with this group. But what if I like sewing? What if I like knitting? Why, based on my ethnicity, should I only go for that? Maybe talk to me as a human being before you assume that I'm one thing. And then when I tell you, oh, you know, I feel really uncomfortable because someone said this to me or that, instead of dismissing it and saying it's not that bad, or it's not that thing, you're taking it wrong way, you've got a chip on your shoulder, why not listen? You would do it to your own friends, your own family, people that look like you. But where's that same respect and understanding and care for people that don't look like you? So yeah, it's a bit of a problem.
So sort of picking up on that, what Phoenix was saying there, I'm wondering, how have like myths and stereotypes really impacted upon your life and your experiences? And, you know, in some ways, what could you maybe have done or found easier if those myths and stereotypes didn't exist?
I think going back to that question and what Phoenix just said, like before, like, oh, Asians are supposed to be good at math. It's things like that as well. These like so-called like positive stereotypes, as well as obviously people think like, you know, oh, everyone thinks I should, you know martial arts or something like this. I'm like, you know, the more harmless, benign kind of things, even though it's a bit silly and stuff and things like that too. But then it's like, yeah, if you're supposed to be like, you know, a high achiever because of like an Asian background or something, if you don't meet that, you're looked down on, as well as having pressure from your own family and other like people in your community and stuff. But when people put this on you, and if you don't attain it, it is really hard. And if you choose something different, like again what Phoenix was saying, like I'm really interested in art, but it was never seen as an option for me. It's still like, okay, well, this is a bit, you know, not what we expected. Or if your personality trait, because like Asian women as well are always supposed to be seen as quiet, polite, submissive, demure, and if you're not like that, it's again, people question that or why. And then same times you get fetishized. I mean, I don't really go out or anything, but there's times when I used to go out and people would instantly think, oh, if you're an Asian woman, you're like this, like that, have guys saying absolutely disgusting things to you as well. So obviously if these things didn't exist, you wouldn't have to deal with these kind of things, because they're all unpleasant and they all occur, like, you know, over time. And it accumulates eventually.
Yeah, I think I do agree. Like, there's just like with the pressure of like having to be a certain way, then it does, it's almost like an hindrance to you just doing what you enjoy and like really just taking the best opportunity out of everything you're meant to take, you know, the best use of essentially. And I think there's a lot of people who feel that same sort of pressure, like regardless of what race you are. And yeah, I think that's a really good point you brought up. Yeah.
I think it causes a conditioning as well. Like you're conditioned when you're constantly told something. You start to become conscious of things. We've talked about the angry black woman. Even when you want to complain, you're kind of holding yourself back because you're like, oh my God, am I going to be that angry black woman? Are they going to view me like that? And that can be a barrier to achieving so many things because you're constantly trying to take a step back and even blaming yourself on some things, thinking that, is it me? Did I think it wrong? Or did I read it wrong? Is this how it is? And it's just, you take time to move forward or to express yourself, and you start to feel conditioned in a certain box. I have to achieve this because I am this person, or I have to act in a certain way because I don't want to be seen as that angry black woman. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, you're giving me a bad service. If it was a Scottish person complaining about that, you would not look at them probably in a certain way. And I was giving my friends an example of in the supermarket, just a simple thing as in the supermarket, you walk in, and on the checkout, there's a Scottish person in front of you and the back of you, and the checkout lady will, have so much chit chat and how are you and all this. And then when you get on the checkout, it's like, hi. And you try to make conversation, but you see that it's not going anywhere. And you start to think, is it me? Is it the way I look? Is it the way I'm acting? Is it, and that it's so horrible to have that feeling all the time when you should perfectly be able to have a conversation or ask questions or even complain.
So kind of following up on that, I'm wondering, how have you found just accessing and receiving goods and services in Scotland? So the ease of getting healthcare or help with businesses or claiming benefits, just interacting with people in shops. How have you found that in your experiences?
For me personally, I have been weirdly fun shops. I don't think I'm quite a threatening person in any way. I'm going into a shop to get my goods and coming back out. Oh, but do certain people kind of stare and watch? And now, unfortunately, I think, oh, it's maybe something wearing. If it's Sunday, maybe I'm wearing something revealing. Thinking, nah, I'm wearing a cardigan. I'm wearing. Think, okay, making loudly on the phone. Oh, not talking to anybody, and you start to be more who you are and accessing stuff. So sometimes there's things I've gone into a shop to try and buy something, and I walk back out. Oh, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not ready for this. So people go, oh, are you sure? Maybe it wasn't that. But if they're not following anyone else around, and I happen to be the only person of color, in the shop, it can easily put two and two together. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not acting suspicious, and it makes that difficult. And then for me, when it comes to health-wise, going to the doctors, it's very odd that they straight away, because my name is not a common name or what you might class as a stereotypical name. They don't think of anything at first, but as soon as you go in, look at your face. Oh, you must be one of those people. I think you need this and this and this. Hold on, I've not even told you what my ailments are yet. I've not told you why I'm even in your doctor's office yet, and you're already assuming these things. It's crazy. It's insane, but it also makes you not feel understood and not wanted. And sometimes you minimize things so you can just get it over and done with very quickly, and that's not a good service, like you were saying, Ella. It's not good for you. You're not providing what you need to provide for me, and I'm not getting what I need. So this is a waste of time. Why are we even here if you're already perceiving me as a certain way just based on the color of my skin?
Yeah, I think Yeah, personally, I'm very comfortable. Like I could walk into a shop, doctors, wherever, but it's not the same for most of the people that I work with. Most of them actually feel really like they can't ask questions because of, you know, whatever connotation is on them. For example, when it comes to mental health is a very, you know, it's a very big issue in our community, and we have you know, we have different cultural connotations as a culture on mental health, right? But also, I guess, for example, health services, they don't take that into consideration. It's just one box, one what is it that they say, one box fits it all or something. Everybody fits in that box, and yet you know, they would have to take time to start to listen and understand, and not just think, oh, you know, that's, you know, you've got anxiety, that's it, you can take this tablet. No, maybe it's something more than that, maybe it's something less than that. You know, a lot of people from from my background will probably be Christians. So they will have a certain way of how they want to treat mental health, maybe pray about it first, or even if you're in hospital, you might need a chaplain to, you know, to someone to speak to therapeutically, and that might be the solution that will help you. But immediately, no, you're on the medication, I think that's anxiety or that's depression, and you believe them because they're doctors, they kind of know what they know. And it's just, it's, you know, when they come back to the community and they say, well, this is what I'm taking, I'm off work because of this. Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you spoken to that? Because we're mostly, for example, very community oriented culture. And sometimes it's that simple isolation that I'm by myself, I don't have my family, so I need friends. And that can take someone in a really bad depression. It's not that they need medication, it's not that they are not coping well. And it's just having services, social services, health services, really understanding a little bit more, like social services as well. Earlier on, we talked about an angry Black woman. When social services go to some doors, it's like, wait, you're gonna take my kids, I'm not having that. And because of how we speak, we're quite passionate when we speak, and it's not because we're being rude, it's not because we mean bad, it's just we are just, that's how we express ourselves. And there's a huge lack of understanding of the people that we are or who we are. And it's all about having conversations. If we don't have these conversations, or we don't get to know people that are different to us, how are we gonna really integrate and work together?
I completely agree with like the cultural kind of aspect of things, and people not realizing or taking this into account as well. I mean, I had some issues with my mental health when I was like a teenager and things, like growing up, and obviously all your friends are doing one thing because it's like Scotland and everyone gets to do this, but maybe your parent, like my mom, was really, really strict. And there's certain things that you can't do that all your friends can do and stuff. And then as well as that, and like cultural kind of pressure on to perform well at school and these kind of things, and if you didn't meet it, all sorts of issues kind of came into play, as well as like, you know, your self-worth being, again, a mixed person or non-white or something as well. And it was just like all these things. So I had all these kind of like issues and stuff, but I was going to like get help about it. And to myself, I was like, I'm not depressed. I'm like, this is circumstantial kind of thing. And, you know, they obviously they just want to medicate you. They don't ask you why you're down, or these kind of issues as well, or these kind of pressures. And like the school doesn't, like, you know, if you're still in school, they don't understand, because like at the time that I was at school, I think things have changed because it's been a long time since I left school, but when I was there, there was not very many other children that were from like diverse backgrounds, shall we say. So the cultural kind of aspect, the teachers couldn't understand. No one was prepared for this as well. So then you're just kind of feeling quite isolated, and then you can't talk about the problems because they think, like you said, the one size fits all kind of approach or something. It just doesn't work and stuff too. So I really feel like, yeah, for kind of like healthcare cultural things as well, I completely agree with you, Helen.
I don't know, Samuel, do you have anything you want to come in on with just accessing what we should take for granted in society?
I think for me anyway, I think just being just me is like the person I am. Like I'm the kind of person who's very like, I'm not really scared to like, you know, go and talk to new people and whatnot. So I think it's for me, I don't really find certain things an issue when it comes to like accessing, certain, help I might need in some regards. But also, I think it's also the fact that, I think I come from a different sort of perspective and a sort of a different angle to a lot of these things. And so like, I can't really say that, I've had any particular experience that I feel like was not taken very seriously, but I think there was only maybe like one scenario, but like, I don't know if it's a general NHS thing, like doctors do not, give much attention to certain issues, even though I've, told them about it time and time again. But yeah, I think that's about as far as my experience really goes. But that as well as the stairs, and yeah, I like, I'm sure there's stuff, but like I just find it very hard to like think of some stuff right now. Yeah.
So I think like one of the things that's really coming across is that there's a really institutional level to a lot of these problems. And there's certain institutions, I'd say, that people are more willing to accept are racist as an institution. And you hear a lot of conversation about that with the police, for example. But do you feel there are institutions that people are not acknowledging are institutionally racist, but really that to move forward, we need to have those conversations and we need to look at those institutions?
I think I'd say universities.
Yeah.
Like, really, I mean, I've had enough, like, kind of like microaggression or kind of like experiences, like you think, from being at that level of education and things as well, you wouldn't encounter them. But there's like, various things like people telling me like my food stinks, but everyone else's food is fine, and everyone can eat their food in the office, but my food apparently is, disgusting or horrible, as well as like, getting, cultural perception of people assuming certain things of you, from a high enough level, and like, asking inappropriate, casually racist questions and things as well. So, but as well as this, when you actually look at representation of staff members and things, and you're like, well, where's all the staff that look like me? You'd see some here and there, but maybe they're on short-term contracts as well. It's not like trying to find someone who has a secure senior position, like especially senior management at the university and stuff too. I'm just like, where is everyone? And people just think, oh no, it's just like this. We're in Scotland, so it's just, this is the way things are. But I was like, it's not like we haven't been here for ages,
Mm.
For me, when I been in the kind of employment world, oh, it's been tough, very tough. And I think of all the jobs that I've had, majority of them, I was a minority, not just because of the color of my skin, but just was hardly anybody there that was a dark skinned person. Anybody there that was a person, and pointing out to them, they're like, no, that's not the case. Are you gonna ask if I've done any research? Are you gonna ask if I've kind of spoken to people, the qualities manager or the HR? They want to dismiss it straight away, and that's really difficult when you want to build groups or forums inside an organization, and they say, okay, we've got this group ready, we've got that group. You need support. I'm not part of that group. Like us coming in, where's our support network in this job? And for most of the jobs that I've had, I wanted to leave. Luckily, for quite a few of those jobs, I had another job set up. But imagine the stress. You're trying to work on your day-to-day job, and then someone's saying things, or a group of people in my experiences have been saying stuff to you, horrible racist things, from really bad words, from negative stereotypes. One person assumed I was smoking weed because I had a eucalyptus locket in my mouth because I had a sore throat one day. They assumed I had weed. I don't think eucalyptus is very weed smelling. That's a very odd thing to think. So stuff like that. And then once I was hanging out with people and a senior member of staff pulled my hair. Things like this happen. And you're thinking, if you had more people of color in your organization, more diversity in your organization, this stuff wouldn't happen. Number one, you wouldn't dare do it because you're like, that's not cool to do that. But also, number two, you just go, well, why would I do that? Why would I feel like it's okay for me to say those things to you, to say those stereotypes, to place that on you? And then me having to go home every night, whether it's crying, whether it's a debilitating situation with my mental health, whether it's thinking, oh, I'm having more sick days because my stomach's churning from going to work, having to deal with you again. And I'm thinking, You wouldn't do that if there was more diversity in your organization. You wouldn't do that if there's more diversity in your schools, in your universities, in your places of work. You wouldn't do that. And the fact that it's an oversight, and when we bring it to the table and say, you know, there's not many people of color in your organization, you know, can we work together? So you try and go through a friendly approach. Nah, we're going to dismiss it. It's no big deal. We haven't got the money in the budgeting for it, but yet you're buying thousands of pens and pencils that nobody needs. You've got money for that, but you haven't got money to have these kind of initiatives and programs in place. It's a shame. It is a shame.
So sort of on the same topic as well, I don't know if this will apply to anyone, but Keith is wondering specifically about the third sector and the voluntary sector on this same sort of issue, and you know, what can that sector do much better than perhaps it's doing at the moment?
I was going to mention before your question is that the councils, like working within the councils and the government, when I think about it, sometimes I'm like, okay, so as a Black person, because I'm quite engaged in my community, really engaged, because I've got children, and that's a gateway for me to get into the community. And I always think, I wonder if I went to stand for a position of, you know, of governance in the council, like be a councillor or be part of, you know, the government. Do you think that even anybody would vote for me? And just because of the color of your skin, you just think, it's not something. It goes back to the first question, the challenges, because you lose your confidence so much because you're overqualified, underqualified, not accepted, not confidence, not, you know, not confident enough or whatever. You speak differently, so it's really hard to see yourself in certain places. But I've worked in the third sector for most of my employment time here in Scotland, and to be honest, most of the places I have worked have been quite accepting of me as a person, but I've really worked in smaller organizations. I can't speak for larger organizations, but some of them you really find, again, you're an outsider because most third sector organizations are quite cliquey. And you find a clique of people that are already working there. It's really hard to join that clique, or even when you try, you already have these obstacles that are surrounding you. And I'm quite a friendly person, so I'll go out of my way to really try and sit at lunch with someone. And I don't know if people are just kind of really generally worried to talk about certain things. But I'm thinking, like, ask me some things, you know, ask me, I'm not from this, ask me about Uganda, ask me about my children, ask me so that I can build those relationships, so that I can you start to know me as a person, and then maybe I can join your clique or be part of you. But it's really hard when you feel like it's like going to high school, right? There's already a group of people there, and you're thinking, well, do you think I'll fit in, or am I trying too hard, or well, I have my friends outside here. So you end up thinking work is work and home is home. So when I'm finished work, I'm not engaging with the people because of, you know, maybe they're going out for drinks and I don't really drink, so I'm excluded like that. So it's kind of really small things like that, like be interested in people. Be interested in their story. And sometimes imagine when you imagine, just always put yourself in someone's shoes. If you're the new kid in high school and nobody's saying hello to you or nobody's sitting with lunch, that's exactly how we feel when we come to organization. And it's not for a lack of trying, but sometimes if you're over trying, and you know, how much more can I talk about the weather, you know? Or how much more can I ask you a question and you don't really, it's a yes, no answer. So I guess my experience, I've had good experiences in certain third sector organizations, but I think that part, that cliquey part where people know people and you can't really get involved, my advice is generally get interested in people and get to know them. What's their story? You can learn a lot from them, and you can build relationships by knowing about a little bit more about them.
Relating back to your question, Emma, about what can organizations do, or non-profit organizations, I think it's just being open to it. If you want your business, whether it's a for-profit or non-for-profit, if you want it to do well, hire people of all ethnicities, of different socioeconomic backgrounds. If you do that, your business will thrive. Number one, you will have people from so many different experiences and backgrounds, from the people who have gone to university, those that haven't, people from outside the UK, people inside the UK. You have that, your business will thrive, your business will do well. There are studies on it, there's statistics on it, it's there. The brain works faster, you know, you learn things, you know, people of different speak different languages, people of different age groups. You learn, you share, you bond, you grow as a business. There's statistics out there that there's a more of employment fulfillment when you have people of different ethnicities and diversities. I think this is great. I want to be in an organization that's colorful and fantastic. It's so lonely. Some people really need to understand it's so lonely when you're the only person of color, or the only two people of color in a huge organization, or even a tiny one. And you have to sometimes, to join the group, to get who you are, change the way you dress, change your accent. You shouldn't have to do that to just be a part of a team. And yet we're forced in weird and unusual ways to do it. Your food you have, how you wear your hair, whether you're wearing hijab or not, whether, you know, if you're the same religion or not. I mean, I kind of get told off because I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Muslim, you know, I'm a pagan, and people assume, oh, all black people are either Christians or they're Muslims. No, but black people come in all shades and sizes, you know, have different religions. We're not all the same. And I think just having that diversity and reaching out to different communities. We're out there, there's so many communities in each city. Just reach out to them and say, hey, we really would like to be more inclusive. We've got this job opening. Do you think anybody would be interested to apply? Just try it. And I think it's that, oh, we don't want to go, it's a lot of hard work, or we're not sure, we don't have the money. Are you sure? Can you make room for the money? Can you try? How do other people think? How do other people feel? I think trying, making that initial step, thinking about it and putting the actions to thought instead of dismissing it, and instead of going, we don't have a problem, let's sweep it under the rug. Trying is a way forward, because we're all human at the end of the day. We all want to feed our families, we all want to pay bills, and we all want to be happy and feel included.
So, Phoenix, you mentioned this idea of people just assuming there's no problem. So Scotland is notorious for this concept of no problem here when it comes to racism, and this idea that somehow Scotland isn't racist, but other places are. And Molly has asked if what you maybe think is the most productive way to try and challenge that misconception / blatant falsehood, really, because it does need tackle, because it is very pervasive.
I would say, I think, sorry if but I would say that, like, in Scotland anyway, or in the UK, when it comes to racism, it has a habit of being much more under the radar, in the sense that you can never really know if someone's being racist. So I feel like when you're younger, like, it's easier to, like, tell if someone's, being, offensive, because they don't have any way of hiding it. They're not, kids are not as skilled at, hiding their racism in day-to-day life. But I think also, having, like, lived in the US for a bit as well, like, you see, like, when it comes to racism, it's much more difficult to spot it in the UK, I think, and especially in Scotland at some points. So I think it goes back to what Helena was saying, that you can never really know if, an interaction, for example, is, where it's based from, because you can't really, look inside someone's head and, see where the intent comes from. But there is a sense of, uncomfortability. Like, you can feel very uncomfortable for some reason. You might not know why that is. And I think it just happens in different ways. And I think within society, organizations, going back to your other question, that there's a lot that organizations can do within themselves, and it comes from, when it comes to what they prioritize. So within our university, for example, in St. Andrews, we realized that, okay, not much has been done in terms of race in St. Andrews for a long time, because it's been a very white university for a long time. And this is for over 50 years, because we talked to people who've who went to St. Andrews like 50 years ago, and they'd say the same thing. But I think really in that case, it also comes down to making it a priority, and a lot of organizations need to make it a priority. And once you make it a priority, you can start like actually challenging these issues. And universities like Oxford and Cambridge have already started doing that, but in terms of St. Andrews, it's something that it's only just started being done with the new BAME student network and all these other things being done. But also, I think sort of like I know this is like a last question, but I think in that sense, like it needs to be made a priority. And once you make it a priority and like something you actually care about, then you can actually start like listening to what people say and actually start like putting them into place. And I think that's the best way to start like dealing with these issues. And I think on a smaller, like more like active, solution as to what organization can do, it can, they can try to foster, more events that actually target these issues. So like, for example, in some organizations, like, some professional like groups and clubs on campus, it can include having like, a Black CEO from a company, or like someone who's, from a certain background who works in this role in this place, having them come in and like trying to like engage more topics and like more like groups and like more, more topics and more diverse motives behind what you already do. So if you're deciding to have a speaker, then who knows, maybe I can have someone who's who's Black, who's come from this country, who's done this and that, who might be Asian. And I think that's something you can do on a small level. But ultimately, like, organizations need to make it a priority, and they can start like facing these issues. And it's such an easy way to start. And like, as soon as you like acknowledge it, then it's a good, that's how you start, essentially. Yeah, sorry if I interrupted, but yeah.
No, I agree with like a lot of what you were saying there as well. I think a lot of that action needs to be sustained as well, because sometimes like certain things can feel like tokenistic. It's like, oh, we've done our gesture here, we've done that, and then it's kind of forgotten about again. And then sometimes when things are like say seen as relevant, people will be on this bandwagon or something. But then afterwards, people will stop doing things, and it needs to be a continuous like discussion. It needs to keep going on. You need to have these groups. You need to keep like regularly doing this and stuff as well. But even on the most personal level, it's like within groups of your friends, whereas your friends or other people on professional levels, listen to people when they tell you about their racist experiences. Don't shoot them down and say things like, oh, they didn't mean it like that, or it wasn't actually racist, or all these things, because it's basically gaslighting, and it's telling you your experiences are invalid. And then it stops people wanting to come forward with their experiences. You start questioning yourself and saying, right, was I actually just being oversensitive? Is this actually racist and stuff? And it's like people like to shoot down the conversation in the first place because they don't want to admit they have a problem with it. Like, especially in Scotland as well. It's like, yeah, we don't have this problem here. We definitely don't have it there. But what you're doing is actually silencing like our voices and stuff and making it more uncomfortable to come forward. I mean, for a long time as well, I was not wanting to like, speak to like certain like groups of my friends or something, because I just felt so, nervous and awkward about it. And I'd only talk to like friends from the same background as me or things, because I was like, they understand me, whereas everyone else like will shoot you down. So yeah, that's my kind of thought on things need to be continued and encouraged and discussed more.
Yeah, I'm the same.
On the question of is Scotland racist? Yes. Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Okay. Sorry, I thought you were.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
No,
you can go.
His mic went a bit weird there, I think. But yeah, Helen, you go and then.
No, I was gonna say, my first experience when I came to Scotland, because I come from a very friendly country, very EastEnders type village. Everybody knows everybody. When I came here, I was expecting the same experience. And I did not have an understanding of racism and what it was. I didn't have an understanding because everybody was the same. And when people from other countries, foreigners, came to Uganda, they were very welcome. They're actually, I think we have a colonial mindset where we look at people, white people, as superior because, I don't know what it is, but that's the way it is. So when I came here, we lived in a flat down in Leith, and it was like, let's go and see the neighbors, let's go and see this. And And my sister would say, oh, no, don't do that, whatever. And then you sit on the bus, and then, you say good morning to the person sitting next to you. They either clench their bag or something. And all this time, I never really understood why, until years later, I'm starting to play it in my head. And maybe they were worried because they didn't know me as a person. They thought I was going to steal their bag, or but in terms of Scotland being racist, it goes back to my point of you start questioning yourself, because it's so you can't really put your finger on it, but something is there, but you can't really spot it or say it. My own experience, like I'm in this mom's group where my child is in the class, and like every time I put something, let's do this, or and anybody going to the play park with the kids? No answer. Are we doing this? No answer. Another person will come and say, oh, my child's really upset. She wants to see her friends since the lockdown. Oh, can we do a play date? Can we do this? And this has all happened during the lockdown. So I started to question myself. I said, So about 2 weeks ago, I had, again, another experience. My daughter was really upset. My 2 older kids were going to play dates. And my little girl was like, oh, can I go for a play date as well? Can you get in touch with my friends? And I put in the mom's group, I said, oh, my little girl's really upset. She wants to go for a play date. Is anybody really available to go for a play date? I put the message in at 9:11 in the morning. The first person that got back to me was at 6 p.m. And I put, my daughter is really upset. She wants to see someone from her class anyway. And one mom got in touch with me and said, oh, I'm really sorry. So, because I'd sent her a message privately, and I said, listen, do you want us to go for a play date with so-and-so? Because my little girl is really upset. Because I thought, okay, everybody else is not answering. Let me just get in touch with one of the moms that I'm close with. And it's not because I don't get engaged. I stop at the school gates. I say hello. I do all the things that moms do. And then when she said to me, oh, she was so busy, I said to her, really, I felt very uncomfortable, because I just thought every time someone puts something about their child, people are quick to answer, yes, let's do a play date, let's go here, let's go there. And I started to question, is it me? Is it my child? Is it? And my little girl said, oh, mommy, maybe they don't want to be my friends. I said, no. I tried to cover up. I said, oh, all mummies are working on during the day, so they won't see the message. And it's likely that some of them did see the message. But from 9:11 in the morning till 6 o'clock, I was so upset. And that I just thought, is it a race thing? Could it be a race thing? Because I do everything that other moms do. I engage, I stop at school gates, I take my kids to birthday parties. What is it that they don't answer my questions? So that makes me think. And then that makes me, but I can't really say it's racism. I don't know if it's racism. I can't put my finger on it, but I feel it is discrimination in a way. Because why else would you not, or why else would you be like that? So I am confident that in Scotland, racism exists. It's very subtle, it's very polite, but it's there. So let's not get defensive. Let us just face it, talk about it, and act on it.
Yeah, Helena, what you said there just so much reminds me of like when I was young, and obviously just coming to Scotland and things as well. And my mum, her English was good enough, but I think she still needs to tend to get comfortable with the language, coming from Thailand and things as well. And people have been told in the school, because I actually worked with a woman who was the woman who took my mum out one day. So the school had said, we've got this woman, and she's like, her daughter's starting the school and everything as well. And it's just like, okay, well, how about, someone introduced her, like take her, of her, she likes to do this and do that. And my mum tried to get involved with so much things. She made all the costumes for the school play, all this other stuff. And that one woman took my mum out once, because I remember that as a kid, once. No one else, because I don't remember my mum having any friends at that age that weren't Thai. She met people through the Thai community and things, but apart from like my dad's family, as like, the other, people, like Scottish people that I'd seen and stuff as well, adults, it was just like Thai women that my mum was friends with, because no one else made that effort. I mean, even got told to, and my mum tried so hard. I remember how hard my mum tried, how much she just wanted us to fit in, and she wasn't accepted. I wasn't accepted in the school either until I actually moved to a different school when my parents separated and things. So what you said there is just, I can't believe people are still like that so many years, it feels like, 25 years later or something like this or that, and it's still, that really reminded me of that.
I'm actually interested, Natasha, too, because my kids are mixed race and they're born here, and they believe, they're Scottish as they see it. But I feel that things like that impact on them. Maybe they don't see it now. Maybe they will see it in the future. I'm really interested to know how, that impacted you growing up in those kinds of situations. Did you feel like, okay, I don't belong really, or I can't have friends, or I can't open up because my mom doesn't have as many, different friends from Scotland, more Thai people, because I'm the same. I've got loads of friends from Africa, and I've not got that many friends. I could actually count how many people I'd call my real true friends from Scotland. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, it does really affect you, like, kind of growing up, because obviously at first, you feel like, well, I'm Scottish. People, like little kids, would ask other little kids, but they wouldn't ask me, do you think she speaks English, and things like this as well, and have that kind of judgment and not want to play with you at first or even try. They just stare at you, kind of thing. And as you get older, I mean, kids might, like, call you names and stuff, and you're always made to feel different, even though you're like, I'm not different though. I speak like everyone else. I sound like everyone else. But everyone sees you as different. So you start to question your identity. You want to maybe be more like, your friends, but you're never seen it. It's that way, kind of thing. And you maybe, certain points, I was like, different parts growing up, there's times that I was like, oh, I wish I wasn't like, mixed. I wish I wasn't like, half Thai. I wish I was just white or something. My life would be easier. But then there's other times when I started feeling like, because I was like quite well accepted by, like, Asian people and the Asian community and stuff, I was like starting to like romanticize ideas like, maybe if I lived in Thailand, things would be different. I would not experience these things and stuff. And there's other times I start to not be like, in touch with like my Scottish side, because I'd be like, these are all the people who've insulted me my whole life, kind of thing, or these kind of things, and shying away from that identity. And it took me a long time struggling with both identities as it growing up, things, trying to accept that I am both. This is me, this is my entire experience and stuff, feeling like you don't fit in, like, on either side of the spectrum, feeling like you're not 100% human even as well. And that's something, and I think, things are going to be common against a lot of mixed people, but there's going to be nuances as well, depending on how you are, seen, how much you pass for being, like, say, white, or how different you look and stuff as well. These things will also impact, like, how you experience the world as a mixed person. But it's like, I think as long as you're in touch with both of your identities and things, and as long as, like, you have people from both sides love you and support you, you can make peace with that. And I think the earlier it is as well, like if you're close to your children, tell them about Uganda, all these things as well. So you're like, husband talking about Scotland and making them feel like you are both. You're going to experience something sometimes that are not quite the same. You're going to experience something that you can, but eventually one day you're going to have this unique perspective on the world, being in two worlds, kind of thing. And it takes time and stuff. I just hope that it happens earlier for people nowadays, and they get to experience that more and more.
Yeah. I definitely agree. So I definitely, you said about the cultural side and like keeping in contact with sort of your own background and like your own specific, like, where you come from essentially. So I think for me, I had the benefit of, when I was growing up, like I had two sort of social circles, in the sense that like I had school, but then also I had my, Nigerian friends from like outside of school who I can always hang out with every Sunday. We'd be in church together every Sunday, and we'd all, enjoy and play games, do sports, whatever it was, that we're doing. And I think for that, like something that was very powerful about that was the fact that I could see in schools that so many kids tried so hard to fit in, and for them, they could never really find, they can never really, some of them, like, because they come from a completely different place, they couldn't really find that, they couldn't really click and connect like that. And I think for them, it was just a very sad thing to see, because if they weren't accepted in school, then it's like, that's their whole world over. Because, it's all they know. It's like, oh, I go home, I go to school. And, I don't have any other like outside groups that, I engage with, so I don't really know better than to, feel really bad if I'm not accepted at school, right? But I think for me, on the opposite hand, I had like, the situation where like, there wasn't that much pressure to like, really try to conform like in school, in the sense of like, I knew that I had friends at the end of the day that, if I was outside of school, then like I knew that at the end of the day, no matter what happened in school, you know, if they didn't like me, like it's okay. Like I'm gonna get past it. Like I mean, it wasn't like that easy, but like I realized that, you know, like it's not all I have, you know, like it's not all there is, you know, like on Sundays I can still be around my close friends, you know, we can all still have a good time. These guys are cool. I enjoyed being with them, you know, like I don't feel like this is everything for me. Like, you know, if I don't get on school, it's not everything for me, you know. And I think having that knowledge really gave me a lot of perspective, like when I was growing up. And for me, I think it's what like really allowed me to like see past like what I saw in school, in the sense that like I didn't really like, you know, of course, like at times it was a barrier in the sense that, you know, trying to, you know, sort of like fit into such an alien space. But like at the end of the day, you know, I could see people who are like myself. I think that's so key. Like if you can't see people like yourself doing things that you want to do, or like, you know, succeeding, then you can't really picture it for your own self. You know, like how can you see it for yourself if you can't see it, you know, happening in other places? I think that's the thing that, you know, I think I benefited from, in the sense like I had a group of an outside group that I could really, you know, trust, and I really liked, and that really motivated me to like try and do more, and like, you know, try and like push, and like, you know, really strive, and like don't not be scared of that. Whereas in school, you know, like I was constantly being, you know, I would be put down on like a crazy number of occasions. Like, you know, I've heard everything, you know, be said. I've witnessed everything. Like it's just like, I think without that, then it would have been you know, it might have been a completely different sort of like, you know, experience for me. But I think it was a privilege I had that I think a lot of people should look into, you know, whether that's, you know, a cultural group, a club, a sport, something that, you know, kids can get involved in, and they can get, you know, really engrossed in, that they love, and like they can find like-minded people outside of, you know, the school space. Because I think the school space can be all consuming sometimes, and if you don't have something else, then it can feel like, you know, it's the end of the world if something goes wrong. So like definitely trying to find, I think it's very important for that whole process that you were just like describing, to have sort of, you know, to give kids options, and, you know, opportunities to find people that they really connect with, and that can really, you know, really motivate them in the future, I think. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
I think that's really good. I wish I kind of had more people when I was growing up in England, you know, who channeled that into me. I think that's great. For a person that wants kids in the future, I'm just gonna go, yeah, go crazy. Just try everything. Like it, you know, give it a few months. You'd like something else to change. Go crazy. Try everything. Never mind stereotypes. And that's, you know, one of my hopes for the future. But when I was growing up, it was hard. It was such a weird thing because I had the subtle racism, the stereotypes, or you look like a certain black person that I don't know much about. We don't really look alike, but I think you look like them. And I had outright, you are an N-word. And sometimes the N-word was used straight up from a hateful point of view. Other times it was from a, oh, well, other black people can say it and it's cool. Those black rappers saying it is cool. So I'm going to say it to you. No, no, you can't. No, you cannot at all. And then you try to explain it to them. And I know some people say, oh, well, they're just kids. They're just young. They don't fully grasp and understand, but it starts at that point. If you teach kids at a young age, certain words are not cool, and this is the history behind it. When they become fully grown adults, that will be less of an issue. And that's, I think, not just in Scotland, but as the UK as a whole, stop ignoring your past, your history. Stop ignoring the hard work that generations of people of colour have given to this country, that have helped support, you know, the whole of the world, and especially the UK, when it came to World War One and World War Two. And beforehand, if we didn't come over here to help build everything up, it wouldn't be what we have it to be now. And then when we try to integrate and go into your classrooms, go into universities, go into your, you know, places of work, we don't like the way you smell, the way you look, what you wear, your accent. We're thinking you just got like a kick in the teeth, really. You know, my grandparents came from the Caribbean and they worked their butt off. And my mum was, my mum and my grandma, they were both, you know, educated really well, and they came over here to work as cleaners. And some people might think, well, they've got to work their way up. But they're educated, they had qualifications. You know, I'm thinking, why should we do that? And they help to bring, you know, bring up the UK. And people go, well, it's not because they were black. But when people start saying, well, we've got documents of this. When they start saying for jobs or for place accommodation, or no Irish, no dogs, and no blacks, yeah, that's discriminatory. What you're doing. And then when so that was then, and then you have now with the Black Lives Movement, and in my little area where I live, you have people saying all lives matter, N-word this and N-word that, and putting swastikas here then everywhere. Oh, it's still alive and kicking, this discriminatory kind of world, this kind of discriminatory kind of thinking and racism. It's there. You may not want to acknowledge it, but it's there. If you know your history, and instead of saying, nah, it's not that big a deal, it's not that, ignore the statistics, ignore the history books, they're there for a reason. Learn, read them, acknowledge them. How can you just say that something is wrong based on your feelings that it's uncomfortable? How uncomfortable is it for us not to get a dog? How uncomfortable is it for our child not to be playing with their friends? How uncomfortable is it for us to have someone look at us like we're something on their shoe because we have food from our country in the canteen? If it's uncomfortable for us, why don't we just talk about it?
So obviously, one of the big issues at the moment, and Samuel's talked about it a bit to do with Oxford and Cambridge, but the idea of decolonizing the curriculum. So the idea that particularly a lot of the conversation around history curriculums, they should actually reflect accurately in schools this contribution by Black and minority ethnic people to British history. And we saw that a little bit in the video at the start. And I'm wondering if there was a reformed curriculum in Scotland, is there particular individuals or events or movements you feel really needed to be embedded in that to try and combat stereotypes and have a more productive understanding and conversation of these issues?
I'm a fan of decolonizing the curriculum. When I was growing up in England, there wasn't many stereotypes. I mean, there were stereotypes of people like your actors or your singers, but there were no role models, real role models that weren't just your stereotypical, yeah, black athlete here, your black singer there, your black rapper there. I mean, we've got so many people of color that are authors, that are actresses, that are singers, that are newscasters and businessmen and women. Why on earth are we not celebrating them? Why are they not in the curriculum? Black history did not start with slavery. It's a part of our history. It's colonization is part of it. But we had kings and queens, princes and princesses in Africa, in the Caribbean, long before anybody came over. Why is that also not being celebrated? I think that needs to be included. We learn about kings and queens in the UK, the royal family. Interesting, not too bad at all. What about us? What about ours? We're just important. Our history is just as important. Don't start with slavery and colonization. Start before that as well. That's what I think should be in the curriculum. Let's support the Scottish people of colour who have done so many great things, that are in places of power, that are in places of influence, but also in the entertainment and the media and the arts world. I come from a heritage and museum background. There's hardly anybody that looks like me when I go to museums and galleries. And if we are, sometimes we're just only the cleaners. We're supposed to have gone beyond that. This is 2020. What is going on here? What is this stereotype? That's all we're good for. Our culture is just as important as yours. I just want representation, and not just when it's Black History Month. Come on now. We can't change our colour at the other times of the year. We're here, we're proud, just represent. That's all I want.
Yeah, I think as well, we don't learn enough about, well, I know it's not start just at colonialism, but we don't learn enough about that at school. You hardly hear anything about it, or you might hear a little bit about, the British Empire, and almost like it was a good thing, and it's like a positive spin on it. And you're like, you've been cutting up, chopping up, dividing up land, taking relics and artifacts and stuff. It's like, I'm Theravada Buddhist and stuff, and so Thailand was never colonized. So sometimes I'm always like, well, I have no dog in this fight. But at the same time, we were a buffer state between, Britain and between France when they were conquering Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam and stuff. If we were this neutral buffer state in between that, that's why Thailand is called what it is now instead of Siam. Thailand actually means land of free people kind of thing as well. So because of this kind of stuff, we didn't have that. But Buddha statues, you see all these decapitated Buddha heads and things, that people use that as garden ornaments or something. But people were cutting off heads of statues, bringing it over because it's easier to transport and stuff. And people will display, all artifacts that might be racist symbols to other people and stuff without any thought of it, because we're not told about colonial history and things and the impact it's had on other people, how much of the world did the UK colonize as well. the majority of the world, basically. This is why we need to learn about the impact this has, and not just from like, oh, this is what happened, we were great, we had this big naval fleet and things. We need to learn about all the people of like, color and all our history and stuff too, to actually make it a more like fair and like, inclusive society and things. Because if we're just erased from the, remember we were having a conversation earlier on today and we are trying to think of like, who do we know, what do we know, what have we learned, like other people that we can look up to and stuff. We were having difficulties when we were talking earlier on today. I mean, one thing that I do want is like, for suffrage, especially for women's rights and the votes, that's one thing I would be like featured, because there was Princess Sophia Singh, who was a woman, who was of like the last Princess of the last Sikh Empire and stuff. She was in the UK as well, and she was part of the suffrage movement too. There's also Sarah Parker Redmond, and she was an African American scholar as well, and they had part in the suffrage movement. But who's heard of them? That's the thing as well. So the intersectionality with that kind of things, and like votes for women too, there's so much history that I feel like we're missing out on and stuff, that we have to actually personally go and learn ourselves, or we hear stories from our parents, but no one else hears it. Our friends don't hear it. So it's like, I learned about, things with Thai history and stuff because of my mum, and talking about why Thailand was free. But people don't know that. They don't even know that, Myanmar was also called like, the Scottish colony for a while, because it was basically run by Scottish people and stuff as well, in like the slave trade and stuff, and colonialism and things. So yeah, it's something that I do feel like really, really needs to be brought into curriculum. So almost like,
yeah, I do agree. Like, I think education is such a big part of things, and I think it can start like it's also like at every single stage of education. So like when I lived in England, for example, I remember like we had this multicultural week where we like, because our class was like, I remember Nottingham just being very diverse at the time, because it had, Caribbeans, it had, people from, different parts of essentially the world. Essentially, we had Indians, we had everyone, but like it wasn't like a white sort of dominated like school environment, right? So I remember that week specifically because it was a time when we were trying new cultures, like when it came to like food and like traditions and like music, and we'd like listen to all this stuff. And I think for me as a kid as well, it stuck so vividly because for me, I think it was one of the first times where you tried something that was so like different to your culture and like just completely different. I think things like that have such an importance in like showing the diversity that exists within the UK, but also like just showing that there's more to everything than just the British, the white, like dominant like view of things. And I think just carrying on like in places like history, for example, even in schools, like I find within my course, I study economics, and I find that often a lot of key facts are missing out. When it comes to like economic development, the UK and the US, you talk about like the really how they came about and how it was such this amazing thing with the Industrial Revolution and all this change and all this just crazy transformations, but you don't really learn about like what was actually underpinning that, which is a lot of exploitation, a lot of with the with things like the with the British companies, Far East India Company I think it's called, and the slave trade and all these other things, and cotton, for example, and how that essentially benefited from the slave trade, right? You don't really learn about that within the curriculum, and I think that gives a very unclear picture in terms of like how people have in their minds that the UK and the US came to be. And if you don't have the full picture, then you have a very flawed picture of how the UK is how it is, why it is one of these countries that's performing really well, why America is performing supposedly really well. If you can't understand the full picture, then you leave with a very flawed view. And I think that's something that education needs to come to terms with and really just do more to include diverse scholars and ideas, and not just the dominant, British or white sort of view. I think ultimately, like, the classic, like historians, the classic creators, artists, whatnot, they would always be important. We have the, Michelangelo and all these other people. They're always going to be important, but at the end of the day, there's also more to the world, and it's not just all there is. There's a lot more out there, and I don't think that's being clearly shown, essentially. Yeah.
So we are sort of slowly running out of time here, and we have a fantastic question from Molly that I'm going to put to the panel, because one of the things that sometimes, certainly I've heard even as a white person, is particularly other white people saying, well, I don't know what terminology to use. I don't know what to say. And Molly's question is basically, how do people on the panel feel about the various terms? So we've used Black and ethnic minority and people of color quite interchangeably in this event. But how do people feel about, so there's BAME, ethnic minority, people of color. What are people's views on this?
I think there's different schools of thought on that, depending on who you're speaking to. Some people don't mind it. Other people have very strong views about, don't call me a person of color. I am not colored, you know. I don't change color when something happens to me. So I guess it depends. Just be conscious of who you're speaking with, or you just know your audience when you're speaking to people, and understand, okay, you know, how can you be safe? I personally don't mind. And I refer to myself as a Black person, but I used to be in work, and people would say, oh, that Black, they're trying to describe you in circles, but they don't really want to say who you are. And it's like, it's fine. You can, you know, as long as you're not being derogatory, you're not meaning it in a derogatory way, it's absolutely fine. Because that's the other thing, that we have become too politically correct, that it stops us from having conversations. And that's not right, because I feel we need to be open. We need to be listening. Even if someone said something that I don't agree with, I want to understand where you're coming from. Why are you using that language? Why did you say that? It's about being open. And then I can explain to you, well, I don't like that, using that terminology because A, B, C, D. But when we're kind of constantly walking on pins and needles, and we can't say certain things, and we can't talk about certain things, that's why we're where we are, because we don't communicate. We don't maybe try sometimes to understand how, you know, what if I use this word? Can I really ask someone? I've had lots of my friends, you know, some of my workmates, people that I've worked with in the past, that I've not spoken to for years. And during this whole Black Lives Matter period, they got in touch with me to say, well, Helena, I didn't realize that my white privilege is like this and like this, and I can do this and that, and what should I do? And that's what I want to hear, because I want to be able to educate people, because some of them genuinely, it's ignorant. They do not know. It's ignorant in a good way. They don't know. And if I tell them what I think or what I feel as a Black person living in Scotland, they'll probably be more receptive and more conscious of what they say or how they say things.
I think for me, it's like the main thing is just recognizing like what we talked about, and just making sure that you're not using something that's not very specific. You know, when we're talking about Black issues, the main thing is when we're talking about Black issues, talk about, you know, Black people, and, you know, how Black people experience things, and how Black people, you know, go through situations. But when we're talking about general diversity questions, then, you know, it's worth using stuff like BAME, I'm pretty sure. But the main thing is not diluting it, and like letting these issues be solved when they do come about. And I think in this scenario, for example, the George Floyd situation really like brought to light sort of the issues that Black people do face around the world. So in that case, it would be a Black issue. It would be a mainly Black issue. But if you're talking about the general, you know, diversity when it comes to, you know, like boards, or like, you know, in businesses or companies or organizations, then it makes sense to use like BAME, I guess. I think for me, the only words I don't really like stand by is if someone, you know, refers to Black people as, you know, Blacks or like whites. It seems a bit, I think maybe that's just a personal thing, but I'm not sure if everyone agrees with that, but that's just my sort of apprehension. But yeah, that's how I feel essentially. Yeah. Just be specific in the situation. If it's a Black issue, talk about how it affects Black people. If it's an Asian issue, if it's you know, depending on what part of Asia, you know, just be specific and make sure you're solving the problems as they are. Yeah, and not like an all lives matter sort of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree. I think I can see from the point of view of different generations using different terminology, and For instance, the word coloured, we don't really use that in the UK unless you're of a specific generation or older generation. I was recently called coloured a while ago, and it shocked me. I was like, oh my. Well, hello, I've not heard that. That's something I would read in a book. As advice, I say businesses, if you want to have more inclusivity in your organization, use BAME, use people of color, put a slash, and explain, you explain what the acronyms are. Just so it encompasses everybody, so nobody feels left out and what have you. I think that's what you should do. If it's a social kind of networking, friend to friend, relationship to relationship, familial thing, ask the person how they would like to be referred. Ask, how would you like to be referred? Where we come from, we say you are a black person. Would you prefer to be a woman of color? Would you prefer to be a man of color? Would you prefer to be this? And as Samuel says, if it's something specific, Black Lives Matter, if it's something academic, just be straight on board, straight to the point. But check with the people you're talking about. Check with the people you're writing about. Do not assume because you have a PhD. Do not assume because you're older. Do not assume because you're in some social hierarchy that you know what you're talking about. Always check. If you are too lazy to go online and check and have a look at forums, because lots of people are talking about, it's been going on for quite a few years now, about people's terminology, how they would like to be referred to as. If you don't want to do that, ask gently. And when a person tells you, I would like to be referred to as a person of color, I would like to be referred to as a black person, take it on board and go with it. Please do not dismiss it. It's like, oh, you've just told me this, but I want to push it to the side. I don't like that. It's kind of equates to the person with a rather ethnic sounding name, and they go, I can't pronounce that. Can I call you Sarah? It's rude. It's outright rude. Regardless, like, I didn't mean it to be that way. It's rude. You're asking me a question. I'm telling you what I'm saying. I'm telling you how I'd like to be referred to as, what is my name, what is my description of my, of my ethnicity. Take it on board and please leave it at that. Don't try and explain it away. That's just rude. That's just wrong. I wouldn't do it to someone who is Asian. I wouldn't do it to someone who is from a tribal community. If they said they prefer to be called a gypsy or a Roma, they specifically, not everybody in that community, them specifically. So I think people need to understand how each social connection, each social interaction needs its own kind of rules and regulations. And yeah, oh, it's political correctness, oh, it's really boring, or it's long-winded, or I don't like it. If you want to get to know someone, you kind of have to go through that. You've got to put effort in. When you're getting to know someone, whether it's at work, whether it's school, and you're getting to know a new friend, you'll learn what their likes and dislikes are. So learn what my likes and dislikes are, and then we can have a healthy relationship. That's what I say.
So we're running slightly over time, but I'm going to finish with one final question for our panelists. So we mentioned, and Helena mentioned, that having had the horrific deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and this preeminence of Black Lives Matter at the moment, what do you hope the legacy is, perhaps out of what is happening right now?
I think in Scotland, for sure, there's a shift. The fact that we're sitting here talking about it comfortably, that's, I think, a huge milestone. And people understanding, I don't think the whole time when I've been talking even to my Scottish friends about race, matters of race or color or whatever, it's like, well, yeah, like, it's not like that. They don't mean it like that. But now they're starting to recognize, actually, I am privileged like this, and you're not, and I need to do something about it. And it's individuals starting to think about these things. It's organizations. And for me, I think that is a step in the right direction. It's not just, let's not stop, let us continue. As a mom, I think I was telling the panel, I'm writing an affirmation book for my biracial children, because I feel like I have to constantly pour in them and make sure that they know who they are and they're confident in who they are. And that's just been started by the movement to say, you've got to do something for your children. I've got to do something for my community. I'm very open to educating people. When people reach out to me, I love to have these conversations. Don't be worried. if you're open to doing this, let's have some actions going forward. Let's know the lockdown's finished, the Black Lives Matter thing is finished. Let's not close it off and going back to ticking boxes. Let us continue the conversations and really take some action.
I'm a bit kind of happy in a sense with that question, because I thought, I just want this world to be nice, man. I want everybody to just be chill. Just, yeah, we're all different and different ethnicities, different upbringings and stuff, and that's great, and it enriches us, and we learn from each other with that. At the end of the day, we all bleed the same blood. We're all human. We all have likes, dislikes, passions, and some of us don't like certain words like moist. It is, it is what it is. And I would hope with the Black Lives Matter, yeah, it's made many people become more woke. It's made some people go, we've been telling you, this is not news. Talk to each other. If you're going to advocate for us, for Black Lives Matter, people of color, you're going to tackle racism and colorism, talk to each other. Don't say we want to help Black people, but you don't have big people in your organization. Don't say you want to tackle colorism, but you don't have people of different shades of Black, different shades of Asian in your organization or in your friends group. Don't do that. That's defeating the purpose. Talk to us. Intersectionality is not only within a person's self, but within a group, within an organization. And that's how we're going to make this world a better place. Change the curriculum. We need to have more people of color in positions of power, and not necessarily to take over. Like some people have this weird fear that we're going to suddenly take over. We're not a disease, we're humans, relax. We just want a fair share. We wouldn't have to be grouped together as people of color if fairly. Then we would just be humans. It's our characters. That's what we want to be based upon. Hey, I like you. Hey, I like you because you like, going to museums too. Instead of just right, I'm a bit afraid because you're Black. I'm a bit afraid because you're lighter or darker shade than me. There's plenty to go around if our intentions and our actions are positive and healthy and balanced. We all make mistakes, we're all human, but it's talking and taking it on board. So I just think the legacy should be about people just being kinder to one another and be more open-minded and understanding. This world is a lot of love and a lot of understanding. That's what I say.
Yeah, I got disconnected for like a little bit there. I was like trying to fix my internet there. So what was the question? Was it just about what the Black Lives Matter movement should achieve and things? Yeah, no, I agree with what you were saying there, like completely as well. Like I think everyone wants the world to be a better place. You want to have an equal share. You want to have your fair share and things as well. And I think we have to recognize each other's differences, but we just shouldn't dislike each other for it. It's like acknowledge, yeah, we're a bit different for this, that, next thing, but we shouldn't look down on other people because of it and stuff as well. And one thing I'm quite interested in the Black Lives Matter movement in particular is like within like maybe other minority groups and stuff, because I know sometimes there can be anti-Blackness in the Asian community and things as well. So it's like being able to recognize these and work within our communities as well to make sure that everyone has a voice in these kind of things too, and to actually address these issues as well, because they all stem from like the same kind of root problem kind of thing and stuff as well. So I think having these things as well, it was like really nice to see that. I saw there was like a virtual Black Lives Matter protest in Thailand as well, and I was like, that's great that it's happening across the world and things too. And I think we do need to like address this within like communities, because obviously colorism, so much of it comes from like colonialism and stuff as well. So yeah, what I'd like to see is like, I want discussion to continue. I want people to actually break down barriers and things, and actually get to know each other properly and make sure that everyone feels included, and eventually have a better society for it. So
I said, yeah, I'm the same. I feel like it's quite interesting to see like how it's leading to action like all around the world and like places you don't even expect. But I think the main thing that I'll take out of it is that I would like to see legacy be something that moves towards actually changing, the organizations around us, and like making sure that more is being done within organizations around us. So not just like, have you guys heard of Occupy Wall Street? Yeah. So
yeah,
everyone knows about it, right? And like the success they had, in which they were big at one point. They were like, yeah, we're gonna do this and that, but ultimately it led to nothing because it didn't really like transform into like something that actually targets those in power, or like actually actually targets the issue at its core. And I think that's one thing that I would like to see the Black Lives Matter move more into. And I think it's been happening more and more with the whole, like, well, in America, there's the whole defund the police movement. But I think in the UK, for example, I would like to see it play out in more, within universities, within schools, within education, within the NHS, within different places of work, and just making sure that, like, it's more equal for people from different backgrounds, and not just like a social media trend. That's the main thing. Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I want to say a huge thank you to all our panelists for giving up their time. And we do have some thank yous as well in the Q&A box from our attendees. So hopefully people did take something away from the conversation and something to think about and something to consider as they go forward. But yeah, again, our panelists have taken the time and it is hugely appreciated. If you are involved in grassroots, whether you call it activism or you're a champion for a community, and this is something you're passionate about, these kind of conversations, we would love for you to get involved with us at Progress and Dialogue. I believe Davy will post our social media, but also if you want to join our network, you can do that via our website, and you can link up with wonderful champions like some of our panelists, and make those connections and have those conversations. We'd also love for you just to follow our social media and get all of our updates on events like this. We will send you a questionnaire about the event. We'd love to get your feedback. How can we improve these events? What did we do well? We really want to develop with your support. And if you have an idea for an event going forward, if you are involved with a minority group or an issue you think is not talked about enough or unheard, please get in touch with us. We want to do events that people want to do. We want to showcase and give a platform to these grassroots movements. We want to make sure that we are bringing to attention perhaps that which is just not brought to attention enough. So please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you all as well for joining us on what is in some places actually a really lovely evening. So it's been great. And thanks again to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.